So I thought I'd come on here and tell you about the first two books I've read so far for this International Book Prize vlog. The first book that I actually started with because it was available on Scribd was Pyre, and I was really looking forward to this, and I can't really fault the writing, but the content was a mixed bag. This is about a man and a woman from two different castes in India. The girl is of a lighter caste and the boy is of a darker caste, and they decide to get married, and their seeming naivety around the fact that that might be an issue when they decide to go home and tell their family, or at least the boy's family, seemed implausible. I don't understand how you grow up in India and that is suddenly going to be a shock to you, that people aren't going to welcome your new wife with open arms. I mean, me as a foreigner who knows relatively little about India but knows enough to know that that potentially is not going to go down well. How do I know that? And the characters who have lived there and grown up there their entire lives don't know that, or think it's going to be a breeze, and that, you know, this community should welcome, you know, his wife with open arms. So that just seemed a little bit like a farce to me, which isn't really what you want, because it then has this underlying distrust and disrespect then of the story itself, because it doesn't really seem that believable, and so you're then constantly on the defense trying to find issues with it, I feel. So yeah, I thought that was an odd choice, given that I'm sure in India everybody knows, you know, what's allowed and what's not allowed, and how things are taken. People are killed over this. Yeah, I found that odd, let's say, as a concept, especially as it didn't really become, I thought maybe this is going to be a nuanced discussion of it, and it wasn't. It was the same thing for 200 pages, where this man's family, specifically the women in his family, would basically hound and berate his new wife, saying that she was a waste of space, she was a princess, and I thought it would kind of pick up and maybe say something more, as more intelligent, more nuanced, but it was literally just that. It was literally just a bunch of villagers having a go at this new wife for 200 pages, and it just felt so flat and one note that I couldn't quite believe it. This would work really well as a short story within a wider collection from India around domestic issues, but it would not work as a standalone novel, certainly in the running for a literary prize like the International Booker. I'm not saying it's bad, the writing, as I say, is faultless, I think, but just the concept, one, the concept is bizarre, as I've said, but two, then the execution of that concept, where he's not really saying anything new other than, what, the caste system is bad, don't judge people based on their caste, X, Y, and Z. Like, haven't we been saying that for years? Like, groundbreaking. Like, what? That is not, I don't think, a valid contestant on this year's International Booker Prize. Of all the Indian books you could have chosen, that's the best. It's a weak year if it is. The second book that I'm going to update you on is Whale. This one I'm about 50% of the way through. This one has really surprised me. If anyone remembers, in the previous International Booker Prize videos that I've done, I do not like Japanese and Korean literature. I find the style of their writing very basic sometimes, and the social and cultural issues that they're bringing up just are so different to my own society and culture that it's almost, I can't really relate at all. I'll give you an example. The issue around solo adult females in convenience store women, for example, that just doesn't seem to resonate as much with me, and the whole I want to just sit at home and eat tteokbokki, and they have this word for people in Japanese culture who want to stay inside all day, isolate themselves deliberately from the rest of society. They have like a word for it. I'll try and remember and write it on this screen, but stuff like that where it's just so far removed from what I know to be my culture. It feels weird saying that, because that's kind of why I read as widely as I do, because I like to learn about different cultures, but there's something about that type of thing that I think maybe either frightens me or seems quite weird. And it is weird. I mean, to deliberately isolate yourself from society and talk about some of the issues that Japanese culture is, it is weird. It's alarming, you know, and so maybe that's what it is. It's disturbing to me that if that's maybe it's almost dystopian in that, is that the way that we're going as well? Are we hopefully we're not following their lead, but are we going to be doing that as well? We're going to have these people who don't want to interact in society, who want to remain these single people working convenience store jobs when they're, you know, they've got a degree. So it is weird. It's dystopic. It's kind of, that for me is like horror. And so traditionally I haven't got on with them, but Whale was very different. The closest book I can relate it to is Lapvona in terms of it's very pacey in its plotting, but it's perfectly beautifully plotted. It is told very well. It's very traditional storytelling. We're going from episode to episode, scene to scene. We're following a central protagonist, but we're also hearing the lives of other people. So our protagonist is a woman called Gumbok, and we meet her as a child. She is the child that ran away from her dad. She, first of all, meets an older man who's a fishmonger, and she does a really good job setting up a dried fish business for him, and then we see her fall pregnant with another man who has it's very magical realist. So this man sort of turns up and is like, right, you're going to be my wife now, and she's like, okay. So, and she goes off and has a baby with him. So it does have magical realist kind of tropes in it. What happens in this book wouldn't necessarily happen in real life. Like, she has a scent about her which is attractive to men, and she also just has a knack for business, where any business she turns her hands to becomes really successful. So then later she sets up a coffee business, and that's really successful. She sets up a brick maker's business. With time, that's also successful because she has the idea of throwing bricks off of trains to kind of get the word out and advertise that her bricks are the best. So it's things like that. And then her and her daughter go and stay with these twins for a while who have an elephant, and the daughter obviously loves the elephant. And then when Gumbok sets up the coffee shop, has success with that in that village, she invites the twins and the elephant, so they all come to town, and everyone in the village loves the elephant. Chun Hui, who is Gumbok's daughter, and the elephant go on their little walks around the village every day, and it's so cute. Just have a lovely life, really. And then her she's not really her ex-husband because I don't think they ever got married, but the old fishmonger comes back to the coffee shop, and they kind of are crying and kind of hugging, and they're like, because they've missed each other, and so she invites him to stay and live with them as well. So everyone's at this point at the 50% mark. Everybody's a happy family, and it's just so lovely. But I'm also really scared to read on because I know that it's not just going to be 50% more of loveliness. It's going to be 50% of potentially tragedy and heartbreak and tough trials, because she's already been through a lot of trials. So she's at this really good place of peace and happiness right now, and I just know that the apple cart is going to be turned over by our author, who is doing such a stellar job of storytelling. But it just feels like, no, can we please just have another 10 minutes of happiness before you put another disaster on these characters. But I am really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be potentially my best book of this month, which is a total shock and a total surprise, and is why I really do love following prizes, because it does find me those rare treats, because I would never in a million years have even glanced at this, let alone picked it up, if it hadn't been nominated. And also I've noticed that it's published by Europa, and Europa are a fantastic publishing house. I've read several Europa editions of novels now, and they really are pretty outstanding. So I think there's also been a couple of translated versions of this. I think this was released, I think there was some controversy around it because it was released several years ago in a different translation in English. So I think this one is on the list because the most recent translation that's been published with Europa has been within the last 12 months. But some people have mentioned, oh, this was published like years ago in English. So yeah, if you see it on Goodreads, there will be some people in the reviews saying that. I think that's everything I want to say on this book so far. I will of course give you my final thought at the end, but I can't imagine this book being anything less than brilliant. I don't see how he can go from kind of what he's done so far and the performance he's given so far downhill. I think he's only going to continue this quality, I hope, I think this will be a really solid story at the end of this. I do like the magical realism elements. It's very similar to Lapvona in there's a little bit of light not light horror, but it has a little bit of light bleakness, and as I said in my previous video, a little bit of the perversion that I noticed in the beginning very much stayed in the beginning. So the two scenes that I referenced for you guys have literally been the worst it got, which I found interesting. Maybe he was trying to like shock us at the beginning, which worked. I was shocked. But so far, I mean, I'm 50% of the way through, and that's all the sort of perversion that's happened. So yeah, it's a thumbs up from me. Hey guys, I'm just popping on here quickly to tell you about my updates on my reading. So I am now 75% of the way through Whale. Last time I spoke to you about this, I was at the 50% mark, and I was concerned that everybody's happiness was going to go down the tubes because we left them in a really good place in Pyongdae, I think that's how you pronounce the village. And so what's happened now in this part is that pretty much almost everyone has died. So the elephant had already died, I think, at the 50% mark, but now both of the twins are dead. Mun, the old fisherman husband who wasn't her husband, who came back, and they ran the brick making business together, he's died in a very similar way to how her father died actually at the beginning of the novel, which was like a kind of, I guess, a cool / odd mirroring. But the most striking thing that's happened in this quarter of the book has been that Gumbok has changed into a man. So if I remember correctly, she is working on, I think at this point, her 5th business, and this is the cinema that is in the shape of a whale. The picture on the front cover, this is where we're heading now. So she has created the cinema. It looks like a whale, and she gives the opening ceremony speech saying she is now a man. She comes to the opening ceremony speech dressed like a man. She now has a girlfriend that she's bought from the local pimp. It has magical realist elements, but for all intents and purposes now she has transitioned into being a man. And so but alongside that transition is her demise. So when she transitions, people start dying, her businesses start failing. Her as her character, she goes from this very strong, independent, successful woman into a very shallow, insecure tyrant, I guess, in a way. And so it's not a very pretty picture at all of this transition. I'm not sure what it's saying about men per se, because it says expressly in the book. In fact, I'll go and get you the quote. So here is the quote that kind of sums it up. "I hear your mum has become a man," he said to Chun-Wee. "That's not strange, though. She should have been one from the beginning." The strong, kind, confident woman she had been was nowhere to be found, and he was now merely a small-minded man, filled with selfish impulses and vengeful thoughts. So I wonder what this is saying. I find that so interesting. I have absolutely no clue where this is going. I hope it's not the total downfall and demise of Gumbok that we're about to witness in this final quarter. I really hope she / he now, I guess, turns things round and builds on that relationship with her daughter, because it really is very tenuous at best at the moment. I would love to hear other people's thoughts actually on this, on what this book is saying more widely, what it's commenting on, because as of yet I'm just enjoying a really good story and I'm not really seeing the bigger, I guess, more nuanced, more detailed messages that are coming through. So it'd be a fascinating conversation. that could be generated from this book. We have our hero in Gumbok, we have mentors and tricksters. One character is literally called the Trickster, and so it has all the perfect storytelling elements in it. Trials, entering the new world and saying goodbye to the old world. I wonder maybe if we're going to go full circle and go back to the original birthplace of Gumbok and wrap things up there with the old woman or the old maid, who does appear several times in sort of like a ghostly type of way. She just sort of appears. This overall has been an absolute gem, and I can 100% see why it is called a masterpiece of modern Korean literature. So yes, and I can very much see why this is a very good endorsement, I feel, for Korean literature, and they've really outdone themselves with this one. Well done, Korea. And yes, I think that's all for now. Hey guys, so I'm just coming on to update you quickly on where I am with Whale. A lot has happened. I have read up until the 90% mark now, I think. I've got about 40 pages left to go. There has been a fire at the Whale cinema and it's killed basically half the village, including our protagonist Gumbok. And so everybody is dead apart from Chun-Wee, the Gumbok's daughter. The police have basically pinned it on Chun-Wee because she, as we know, she has some form of special needs, so she's mute, she can't speak for herself, and so it's just basically pinned on her as the kind of large, brute-like woman who can't defend herself, which is horrible, just awful, because then Chun-Wee goes to prison. There is a huge amount of violence that goes on in this part of the book, almost to an absurd amount and almost to a magical realism level, in that the violence doesn't seem, that some of the violence can't be real. That doesn't actually happen in real life. Like, for example, Chun-Wee rips a man's arm off, and I mean, in real life you can't actually rip someone's arm off. I mean, that's just not, I mean, maybe if you had a machine, like if your arm gets trapped in a machine, then yes, you can have your arm ripped off, but in terms of another human being, just ripping another human being's arm off, that just on strength alone, that I'm pretty sure is I'm pretty confident that can't actually happen in real life. And so in a way the violence gets to a level where it's no longer believable, and that's kind of a good thing, because the book is magical realist anyway in its tone, but certainly with the violence involved, it's kind of nice to take it to that fantastical level, because it's no longer real, it's no longer actually happening. We're in a story, we're in a fiction novel, like this is not actually happening. And so it reminded me a lot of, I was actually laughing at one point because it reminded me of the Quentin Tarantino film Django Unchained, where you have in the last, in final part of the film, you have all this just complete absurd level of violence where you have the heads being blown off and like fountains of blood spurting out of everyone's neck, to opera music, and I remember the first time I saw that I was absolutely dying with laughter, because it was just the contrast between operatic music and then fountains of blood and heads bobbing everywhere. I remember the people that I watched that with, we all had a laugh at that one, and this was very reminiscent in that this could easily be a movie. This is so cinematic, and it's moments like that if you were to transition this novel into a film, it would work so well, as well as obviously the great characters and the great places where this book is set. I feel like all of it would translate so beautifully to film, so hopefully that's in the works, because I would really like to see that, and I will update you very shortly with my next updates on these books. Hi guys, so I'm just interrupting the book talk to tell you about something exciting that's happening in Bali today. I am just off out to go and see the Ogo Ogo, and that is something really special that happens once a year in Bali. It's the day before the day where all of the spirits are banished from the island. So these huge creatures that I'm going to show you in the next clip have been built to scare away the bad and evil spirits from Bali, so that tomorrow the island will be cleansed. And in order to do that, what's going to happen is tomorrow there's going to be a national lockdown. This happens every year, where no one's allowed to go to work, no one's even allowed to leave the house. You cannot go on the roads, you can't drive anywhere, you can't even leave your property. So it is total lockdown, and the rule is for everybody apart from people who need emergency services. Yes, this is a really exciting time. Today I felt the anticipation all day. You can feel it on the streets. It's kind of that kind of mad rush where people are going to the supermarkets because everything is closed tomorrow, so they're getting their supplies and their food and whatnot, and then everybody is heading down to see the Ogo Ogo. As you can see, I've still got the wet hair because I've just come out of the swimming pool, and right, I'm now going to hop onto my bike and head down to the parade. Hey guys, so I'm just coming on here to update you really quickly on Whale, because I finished it. This is a rice field in Bali, by the way. I am just driving actually from Amed, where I was on the north coast. I'm driving back down to Ubud, which is kind of more central, which will take me about 2.5 hours, I reckon, depending on how long this pit stop lasts for. I have my little mocktail orange juice thing going on here. I'm on a bike, so I do actually have a jacket and proper clothes on, so it was kind of but I thought I would look semi-presentable for this video. So to talk about Whale then, I think the last time I spoke to you I was at the 85-ish% mark, and Chun Hui in this last little section of the book has been released from prison. After 10 years she's been given a pardon, and she basically heads back to Pyeongtaek, which was kind of where she spent the majority of her life, and obviously everyone's dead because everyone died in the cinema fire. And so she's very sad, she's very alone. There's a romance in this last 10% for Chung Hui, which I didn't really enjoy, and when you read it for yourself you'll know why. It's pretty obvious why I didn't like it, but I can understand why it had to happen for the progression of the plot. And so it is a really good ending to this book, a very satisfying ending. When you're really invested in a book and really love it as much as I love this book, the ending has to be satisfying and can't be anticlimactic, and this one wasn't that. It was perfect for the book. It's still sad, as a lot of the book has been. We are given 2 epilogues, which I really liked. So there's epilogue 1 ending, and epilogue 2 for the alternate ending, both of which were great. And this was such a surprise, as I'm sure you guys remember from my first international video where I was reading the first 10%. I had very big reservations about going into this book, kind of perverse scenes, things that were in the first 10%, and I was like, oh god, here we go, where are we going with this? If this is it for the entire book, then I probably won't probably might end up DNFing this, but they were literally it, really. I mean, we start off with the, I'm not really sure what the author's intentions were. Maybe he was sort of trying to shock people and kind of whittling his audience down to the select few who would continue with him. But it certainly did not remain the way it begins. It does in the sense of great writing and great storytelling, but it doesn't remain so kind of harsh with the actual content. I don't even know what to call it. Is it a family saga? Yeah. Is it historical fiction? Yes. Is it kind of magical realist dystopian? Yes. It's absolutely beautiful. I can totally see why it's called a masterpiece of modern Korean literature. I mean, it really is. It's been fantastic. And surprisingly, a little spoiler for my March wrap-up, but this is probably my best book of the month so far. And this is in a month where I've read Age of Vice, which is an absolute 5-star, amazing story. But yeah, Whale has just outdone itself, completely surpassed all of my expectations. And I can't imagine, surely there is not another book on this international long list that can beat that, surely not. And potentially maybe then this is my winner. It probably won't win the overall prize. Right now we've only had the long list announced, and so it has right now a 1 in 13 chance of winning. Maybe it will make the shortlist, who knows, but if it doesn't, I certainly am thrilled that I have found one of my best books of the year. Wow, I can't wait to continue with the rest of this long list. So I'll see you when I've finished my drive and I'm back in Ubud. Hello everybody. So as you can probably tell from the backdrop of this video and the roosters that will be appearing intermittently, there's one, I am now back in Ubud. I've driven home from Ahmed. It's now actually a few days later before I've sat down to film this clip. But this morning I'm going to go and grab a coffee, as I always do, and I thought, right, beforehand I'm going to come and sit up on the roof and tell you about Clemens Mayer's While We Were Dreaming. I actually received an e-arc off of NetGalley for While We Were Dreaming and Live in Lviv, and so it did mean that often with e-arcs there is some assembly required. So I opened up While We Were Dreaming and the chapter name was sort of wedged in capitals in between paragraphs, and so you have to go through and highlight where your chapter breaks are. It is a kind of like build your own book when you get an e-arc, which is something that I am still getting used to. I kind of have to put myself into the mindset of, right, I'm an editor, or I'm kind of in the later stages of my manuscript and I'm like reviewing it, which I guess I kind of am. It certainly hinders the reading experience, I think, is what I'm trying to say. Not that I think that took away from my overall assessment of it. I still think I would have had the same issue with it that I did, which was that I just didn't really connect to the subject matter. So I thought potentially I would. I tend to enjoy coming of age. And even with male protagonists, something like Catcher in the Rye or the Secret History, I really can connect to them as well, even though I'm not necessarily the same sex as them. And so I think it was more to do with the fact that they didn't really, unlike in The Catcher in the Rye and The Secret History, those boys showed an immense amount of vulnerability, and that was obvious through the page, and so we really cared deeply for them. Whereas that didn't really happen in While We Were Dreaming. There wasn't a vulnerability that was overly apparent with these boys. They were very much joyriding, surfing on the windowsills of cars. It all felt a bit too, just sort of like an environment I didn't want to be in, and that's kind of how it felt. So, which is totally fine, and I don't want to take away anything from Clemens Mayer's writing. It was perfectly great writing, and it's obviously Fitzcarraldo, so I don't want to take anything away from them either. I just don't think it was for me, really. So I DNF'd that probably at the 10% mark, maybe just slightly over, and have no regrets. So, as you can probably tell from the title of this video, this is an episode 1, and episode 2 will be coming shortly, just because I felt, looking at the length of this video, it's already kind of at the 30-40 minute mark. I didn't really want to be uploading a video much longer than that, and so episode 2 will be coming very shortly with my thoughts on Time Shelter, Standing Heavy and The Birthday Party. So stick around if you would like to see that and follow that. That will be filmed partly in Ubud and partly in Singapore, as I have a little trip to Singapore planned this weekend. So yes, if you would like to be a fly on the wall as I go around, then by all means check out episode 2 of this video. And with that, I shall see you very soon in my next one. Bye guys, thanks so much for watching.